Celebrities. We love them, but have we loved them before? And by that I mean, have they traveled back in time and been prominent in the past, or perhaps will they continue to be prominent in the far, far future? Starting off our list today with Christopher Lloyd, because if we're going to talk about celebrities time traveling, we have to include the celebrity who brought the concept of time travel into the mainstream of pop culture 39 years ago with the release of Back to the Future. That's right, it is entirely possible that not only does Christopher Lloyd play a time traveler, but that he actually is one too. Before you start calling me crazy in the comments, 1, remember you are the one who decided to click on this video, and 2, take a look at this. This being a side-by-side image of Christopher Lloyd and John C. Calhoun. John C. Calhoun being a vocal statesman from South Carolina who also served as the 7th Vice President of the United States from 1925 to 1932. The resemblance is uncanny, likely because they're not actually two separate men, but rather because Christopher Lloyd, as he is known today, really is John C. Calhoun, as he was known back in the 1800s. Next up, we have Justin Timberlake, teenage heartthrob, bad boy, crappy ex-boyfriend to Britney Spears, and possible time traveler? Turns out it's entirely possible that Timberlake has been breaking hearts for far longer than was once believed. Also, he might have, at one time, lived in Liverpool. I say that because of this. A side-by-side of Justin Timberlake and the mugshot of an unknown man working in the Liverpool mines far before Justin Timberlake was ever supposed to have been born. It's like that guy's his mirror, and his mirror is staring back at him. As for what the mine worker was charged with, I'm not sure, but I'm willing to bet it ain't nothing but a mistake. In sync, I think. No, Backstreet Boys. Sorry guys. Alright, moving on from music and television celebrities to celebrity activists. She's small, she's mighty, and she might have lived 124 years ago in 1898. It's Greta Thunberg. Before you start yelling, "How dare you make that assumption" at me through your computer screens, take a look at this. An image of a young woman who looks exactly like Greta and wears her hair incredibly similarly to Greta, cultivating the land in a way that Greta would have likely approved of alongside 2 unknown children. Okay, I'm not actually sure what they're doing in the photo, but I don't see any big polluting machinery anywhere in the photo, so I'd say it's probably Greta approved. Maybe because it is Greta. If this is true and Greta Thunberg really is a time traveler and she's seen the future, maybe we should start listening to her. Next up, we have Keanu Reeves, who has apparently lived many lives over many centuries. That's right, not only has he been in The Matrix, John Wick, Deep Web, The Whole Truth, Devil's Advocate, and so many other big films, apparently he has also been portrayed in paintings dating all the way back to 1530. Now, I'm going to show you a photo, but if it ends up being a bit too much to handle, don't worry, because there's a pill for that. It's either red or blue, I forget which. Anyways, take a look at this 1530 Italian painting of a man who is unknown, but not that unknown because it's clearly Keanu Reeves. You know who else is Keanu Reeves? This guy, Paul Monet, a popular French actor who lived during the late 19th and early 20th century, and because he's Keanu Reeves, also today in the 21st century. It's not a coincidence, it's Keanu. Next up, we've got Eddie Murphy. While some of you might know him from films such as Norbit, The Nutty Professor, Meet Dave, Tower Heist, Trading Places, Mr. Church, and Shrek, my personal favorite, other people know him as the classy man who dressed and photographed quite well during a time long before Eddie Murphy was supposedly born. Take a look. I mean, with the resemblance, it's more than clear as day that these two are one of a kind, probably because they are one man living across time. While this might seem perplexing, the real question here is, do you think the unknown classy man, as he is referred to on the internet, likes parfait? I mean, everybody likes parfait, and waffles, and boulders. That's a nice boulder. Next up, we've got Bruce Willis, star of Die Hard, The Sixth Sense, Glass, Unbreakable, Pulp Fiction, Split, Red, Armageddon, and an army general that was living in the late 19th and 20th century? Well, take a look. That's right, not only has Bruce Willis been awarded countless awards for film and television, including an Emmy, it is entirely possible that at one point Bruce Willis once went by the name Douglas MacArthur and was awarded many medals for providing exemplary service during his time serving as a general for the US military during World War II. Maybe one day he'll play his past self in a movie. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. Next up, we have 2 more than lifelong friends, Daniel Radcliffe and Andy Samberg, 2 great actors with great achievements who have apparently been around for a great deal of time, according to this photograph. A photo taken of the pair in 1978, the year Sandberg was supposedly born, and 11 years before Radcliffe's supposed birth, found in an old high school yearbook. Give it up, guys. We know. You're a time traveler, Harry. And Andy's got a time machine in a box. That's a reference. Next up, we have a 19th century McConaughey. That's right, apparently this guy has been ripping through the fabric of space and time since long before Interstellar hit the big screen and the quest to return to Murph ensued. If you've seen the movie or any of these movies, maybe you'll get my references. Anyways, apparently he wasn't always a movie star. At one point he was this guy, just a simple pipe-smoking, bird-watching man from Alabama living, smoking, and watching in the 1800s. The man truly hasn't aged. I guess after so many years of just watching, McConaughey finally decided he'd rather be the watchee, and now he has an Oscar. Next up, not only has Jay-Z been around the block, but according to this photo, he's been around for an incredibly long time, since the 1930s at least, which is when this photo of this man, who looks an awful lot like Jay-Z, was taken in Harlem, not far from where Jay-Z supposedly grew up in Brooklyn. And when I say not far, I mean not far. Harlem to Brooklyn is only about a 50-minute drive, a 1-hour subway, a 1.5-hour bike ride, and a 4.5-hour walk. Why did I look all of that up? For you guys, of course. Considering the fact that this photo was taken in 1939 and Jay-Z supposedly wasn't born until 1964, I say he would have had plenty of time to get from Harlem to Brooklyn, and plenty of time to figure out the lyrics to Empire State of Mind. He's also been quoted saying, "I'm not afraid of dying," probably because he has a time machine that allowed him to go into the future and find the elixir of everlasting life, or something along those lines. And finally, we have the speed round. First up, we've got Nick Cage, pictured in the 1800s living under an unknown alias. And then of course there is Johnny Depp, who looks exactly like someone's grandfather, probably because he traveled back in time to hook up with someone under 25, and he is whoever posted this photo's grandfather. It was anonymous on Reddit. Next up, we have John Travolta and this guy, who is clearly just John Travolta living in the 1860s. Michael Jackson, who clearly traveled back in time to ancient Egypt, otherwise how the heck would this bust exist? Peter Dinklage obviously wanted a taste of medieval life, hence his appearances on Game of Thrones, and this painting of Sebastian de Mora painted in 1645. And finally, we have Mark Zuckerberg, who traveled all the way back to the 1600s to finally gain some respect as the King of Spain.
Number 10. Strange lights. Since the 1940s and possibly even earlier, there has been a strange light phenomenon observed in the Hesdalen Valley, Norway. The spectacle has a form of white or yellow light of unknown origin standing or floating above ground level. Between 1981 and 1984, the lights were observed up to 20 times per week, but have drastically reduced in frequency since then, about 10 to 20 times per year. Now why the decrease all of a sudden? No one knows, and no one knows where the lights come from, but UFO enthusiasts took this as a sign that the valley was a portal to other worlds. Now, it wasn't just conspiracy theorists that were interested in this, as the strange bursts of light in the 1980s attracted physicists too, and quests piqued by the idea of some unexplained natural phenomenon. In the decades since, scientists have determined the glow likely comes from air turned into plasma, but despite ongoing research and numerous working hypotheses, there is no convincing explanation of the origin of these lights, and it seems like it will always be a mystery. Number 9. Falling through the ceiling. Back in the 1950s, the Cooper family from Texas moved into their new house. Once there, they took a family photo to commemorate the new move-in. Everything was normal, but then when the picture was developed, the image of a body falling from the ceiling was clearly visible. Now, to be clear, no one fell from the ceiling when they took the photo, so what happened? As further investigation on this story has brought no plausible explanation, there exists many speculations, including one that argues that the shadow is the ghost of a previous owner of the house. But my question is, why is he falling from the ceiling? It just doesn't make sense, and it's absolutely terrifying, and I can't even imagine the reactions when they got the photo back. Number 8. The Young Boy. One of the most famous haunted houses in the United States is the Dutch Colonial House at 112 Ocean Avenue 2 in Amityville, New York. The haunting stems from the night of November 13th, 1974, when 23-year-old Ronald DeFeo ended the lives of all 6 members of his family. He was then arrested, convicted, and given 6 concurrent life sentences. In December 1975, George and Kathy Lutz, along with their 3 children, moved into the house and claimed that spooky things were happening. For example, George would wake up at 3:15 every morning, which was the approximate time that Ronald committed his crimes. Kathy said she would feel a ghostly presence and be embraced by it. All of this and more caused the family to flee in fear after only staying at the house for 28 days, and honestly, I don't blame them. Due to this, demonologists Ed and Lorraine Warren visited the house and set up time-lapse infrared cameras and caught this photo. Now, this picture wasn't made public until 3 years later when George Lutz appeared on the Merv Griffith Show in 1979. Believers of the haunting believe that the photo is a picture of the youngest DeFeo son, John Matthew, who was 9 at the time of the deaths. Others believe it's a staged photo, but despite the controversy, this picture is one of the most frightening images from the Amityville horror. Number 7. The Madonna with the Saint Giovanni. This is one of the most famous unexplained images of all time. The painting, the Madonna with the Saint Giovanni, was created in the 15th century. While the focus of the picture is on Mary, something creepy hovers above her left shoulder. There's an object that appears to be some sort of UFO hovering above the cliffs, and just below it you can see a man and his dog looking up at the saucer. Now, why on earth would this be included in the painting? Is it proof that UFOs and aliens have been around for a long time and humans knew we weren't alone in the universe? I'm not sure what the explanation is, but to be honest, it scares me. Number 6. Ghost outside. This ghostly figure was captured on a security camera at the Hampton Court, a royal palace located near the Greater London area. In the 16th century, the palace was expanded and renovated to be fit for a king, complete with lush gardens, banquet halls, and Henry VIII state and private apartments. This palace has over 1,390 rooms, but it seems like they had an unwanted visitor. A figure appeared to be closing one of the palace's doors, but when guards arrived to the palace, nobody was there. Now, as the palace has a long and violent history, the figure is believed to be one of the several ghosts that are rumored to haunt the building. Number 5. The sea creature. Hook Island is off the coast of Queensland, Australia, and Robert Le Sirach, his family, and a friend, Hank de Jong, stayed there for 3 months in late 1964. On December 12, 1964, the Le Sirachs and Hank were crossing Stonehaven Bay on the island when Robert's wife noticed something odd in the water. It was a long, tadpole-like creature. It was black and was believed that it was at least 30 feet long. Robert and Hank decided to venture into the water and record it on film. When they entered the water, the monster was even bigger than they thought, but as they started recording, the creature opened its mouth and swam away. Then when they checked the film, they had no footage of the creature, but the picture clearly shows it. The pictures were published in a magazine and eventually spread across the world, making it one of the most famous and unexplained pictures of a cryptid. Now, there are a number of possible explanations as to what this creature really is. One is that it was just a plastic bag that had been used by the American Navy for experiments in towing fuel. It could be a deflated skyhook balloon covered in weeds, or it could be a roll of cloth that was tied together and placed in the bottom of the lagoon. Regardless of what it is, I wouldn't want to go near it. Number 4. The moon. In 1972, this image was taken by Apollo 17 during its flight to the moon near the area known as Geophone Rock. NASA listed this image as blank, but after retouching the photo, you can see that it's not completely blank. Turning up the contrast, a pyramidal structure can be seen. So what is it? Was it some malfunction of the camera, or is there actually a pyramid on the moon? NASA has never given a credible version of the issue, which has led to some speculations about what else can actually be on the moon hidden to public awareness. And listen, not to be a crazy conspiracy theorist, but maybe it's true that aliens built the pyramids on Earth, as it looks like they did it on the moon too. And there was that one time NASA lost connection with an astronaut who was freaking out saying they're watching us from the moon, and what if the they're talking about lives in those pyramids? Huh? Just something to think about. Number 3. South Forks Bridge. This image was first made available to the public in 2004 when it was featured in the Barrelorn Pioneer Museum's exhibit, Their Past Lives Here. The photograph was taken in 1941 at the reopening of the South Fork Bridge in Canada. When the museum digitized and placed the collection online that included this picture in 2010, the internet went crazy. In the image, there is a man who clearly stands out, and many think he is a time traveler. traveler. The idea of him being a time traveler hinges on 3 items he is seen wearing or holding that appear to be of too modern a vintage for the 1940s, a logo shirt, a small portable camera, and wraparound sunglasses. It just seems like he's completely out of place, but who knows? Number 2. Ghost in the water. In 2014, Kim Davidson was swimming in a lake with a friend and their combined 3 children. They went to Murphy's Hole in Lockyer River in Queensland, Australia. While there, they took a photograph. But when the photograph came out, there was a ghostly figure of a girl behind the group who looked like she was leering behind the family. They said there was nothing in between them when the photo was taken, and on closely examining the image, they realized it was a white face with dark eyes and 2 horns on either side of the head. Its fingers are on Kim's shoulder and on the small girl's right arm. Kim posted it on Facebook, and upon seeing the image, many comments were made, and some said that the 2 horns looked like 2 ponytails or buns. A fellow user shared the story of Doreen O'Sullivan, a girl who accidentally drowned in the same creek in the same spot in 1913. Her obituary was found in the Brisbane Courier, dated the 22nd of November 1913. Now, the spot, which has always been considered dangerous, is known as Murphy's Hole and is over 20 feet deep. Upon reading this, Kim recollected that they had experienced strange things that day when they were swimming in the water. She felt someone's presence behind her, but she ignored it, and twice someone in the water even grabbed her elder daughter's leg. Now, by looking at this photo, she was convinced that the unknown face was that of Doreen. Kim got 2 paranormal experts to check the picture, and after investigating the photograph carefully, they concluded that the shape of the image was that of a child. And coming in at number 1, the Babushka Lady. The woman in the brown coat, or the Babushka Lady as she was later called by the FBI, was very close to JFK when he was assassinated in Dallas. Traveling in a presidential motorcade through downtown Dallas, JFK was assassinated, hit once in the back and once in the head. Kennedy was taken to Parkland Hospital for emergency medical treatment, where he was pronounced dead 30 minutes later. Now, Lee Harvey Oswald was charged with Kennedy's assassination, which he denied. Oswald was assassinated as well soon after. Now, the spawned numerous conspiracy theories. These theories allege the involvement of the CIA, the Mafia, Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson, Cuban Prime Minister Fidel Castro, the KGB, or some combination of these individuals and entities. The original FBI investigation and Warren Commission report, as well as the alleged benign CIA cover-up. But according to eyewitnesses, this woman, the Babushka Lady, filmed the entire thing. It's thought that from her vantage point, she may have been able to answer some critical questions about what really happened that day. However, the FBI was never able to track her down, and no one has since been able to figure out the identity of this mystery observer.
Kicking off the list at number 10, the Hook Island Sea Monster. Ah yes, another reason to avoid the ocean, as if our channel wasn't that already. This photo was taken back in 1964. This photo apparently is a sea monster off the coast of Hook Island. This thing is roughly 90 feet in length, so it's pretty noticeable, especially in shallow waters. A man named Robert LeSerac spotted it while he was with his family. He noticed its tail was injured, but its head was massive. Those are the 2 noticeable features. Injured tail and a big old head. It looked like a giant tadpole, but many believe it's a giant tarp, but there's not enough evidence either way. What do you guys think? Is it some sort of mythological creature, or maybe a now extinct species of fish, or just an optical illusion? Maybe just a shadow, or a big rock. It could be a rock. Either way, avoid those shallow areas. Stingrays alone? No way. Catch me in a lake. Number 9, the skunk ape. This one is exactly what it sounds like. How fun. The skunk ape was seen back in 2000, so hopefully, if it was a real thing, it's long gone by now. Or it's since reproduced and we're screwed. 2 photos were taken of this skunk ape creature. This thing looks like Bigfoot's cooler, older cousin. You know, the cousin who has a lava lamp and does kickflips in the garage in October? That's the skunk ape, compared to Bigfoot. Bigfoot's old news. Get him out of here. What does he do anyways besides... Guy's boring. Doesn't do any kickflips. This guy for sure. This guy haunts families, it seems. An anonymous source sent the Sarasota County Sheriff's Department these photos. They mailed them, which for starters, how jarring would that be to open 9 a.m. in the morning? But she claims these photos were taken in her backyard, and that this creature was not a black bear. I don't think that's a black bear. If anything, it's a really large dog. Those teeth alone are a red flag, either way. Closing that door. Good night. Number 8. Phoenix Lights. Turning the calendars back to 1997, a time long before Photoshop. This photo here shows a series of unidentified aerial phenomena. It's just hovering over Phoenix, Arizona. They were bright, and they stuck around for a few hours. This was also only 1 year after the movie Independence Day came out, so I'm sure this freaked a lot of residents out. Or maybe it's fake because of the movie. Who knows? That's why I'm here. There's many eyewitness reports of the Phoenix lights, so much so that an explanation was demanded. So the US Air Force came forward and said the lights were flares dropping during a training exercise. Yeah, just a casual training night exercise over the city of Phoenix, Arizona. Classic, we always see those. This obviously worried people and the Air Force took responsibility, yet later on in 2007 and 2008, the same lights returned over the city. The same lights returned in the same spot. Still, there has been no explanation that makes any sense. Drones? Maybe? Was it too soon? I don't know. Drones are good. Drones are too good now. That bowling alley video of the drone whipping through, way too good. So, you never know. Number 7, Battle of Los Angeles. Of course, we have to mention one of the most unspeakable battles of all time on this list. The Battle of LA, otherwise known as the Great Los Angeles Air Raid, happened during World War II. It happened right at the end of February 1942. This event, first of all, took place only a few months after the Pearl Harbor attack, so everybody was obviously a little stressed out at this point. Something like 25 enemy aircraft was spotted, flying over LA in the late hours of February 24th, so air raids went off. Blackouts were now in effect. This was not a drill. Or was it? At this point, it didn't look like a drill. Artillery fire, machine guns, anti-aircraft shells were all going off. It was loud, it was bright, and in total, around 1,400 shells were fired off. 2 people had heart attacks as this unfolded. 5 people died in total from this retaliation, and it was all a false alarm. Apparently, a press conference was held by the Secretary of the Navy, Frank Knox, and he called the incident war nerves. Just some nerves, just some whoops, thought I heard something, false alarm. This is insane. Do we think something was actually there? Is this photo a photo of a false alarm? You be the judge. That's why I'm here. Number 6, Spaceman. Look, we've all been photobombed before. It's a blessing in disguise, right? You look back at prom photos, some guy sneezing in the background, making a mess. It's the best. But when Jim Templeton took a photo of his daughter in an empty marsh long before Photoshop existed, might I add, it appears an astronaut photobombed the family moment. Yeah, Jim assures us that nobody was around, which I personally believe. Otherwise, what a weird photo to take in an otherwise empty field. I'd be like, hi, I don't want to be in this photo. It's weird, right? It makes it more believable. Kodak even got involved in the story, like the company Kodak. They confirmed this photo was not tampered with. Yeah, we're just gonna run everything by Kodak from now on. They were so confident when this happened. Spider-Man leak, Kodak's like, that's Andrew Garfield. That's authentic, that's a real one. Number 5, the Worstead Church. Okay, time to get a little paranormal. We love those. Back in 1975, Peter and Diane Berthelot were visiting the Worstead Church in the UK. So like any other visitor does, Peter took a photo of his lovely wife sitting in this spectacle of a church. But later on, once said photo was developed, somebody else was in the photo. Another photobomb. Or something. There appears to be a person dressed in all white sitting behind Diane, some sort of figure. How calming is that? Just maybe behind you at all times, who knows? When the couple went back to the same church to ask about who it was or what it was, a local suggested that they may have gotten photo proof of the white lady, the spirit of a healer who haunts the church. I mean, as far as surprise ghosts go, that's a pretty tame encounter. That's how it should be, if anything. That's how I hope it goes. God forbid I ever encounter a spirit. Is there one behind me right now? I don't want to look. Number 4, the Black Knight Satellite. Not to be confused with Martin Lawrence's The Black Knight, that's a pretty historical and memorable movie in itself. The Black Knight Satellite is something that has been orbiting our planet for thousands of years. Everything else in this list is quite recent, all things considered. This myth is an ancient one. This photo here you've probably seen at one point or another. It was taken back in 1998 during an American mission to the International Space Station. Apparently this guy has been hovering over Earth, just watching, just observing us. Some sort of alien satellite. That's the theory here. That's a fun theory, no doubt about it, but during a spacewalk in 1998, one of the thermal covers came loose and drifted away from the station. Could this just be that cover? It just looks sinister because it's in space and the photo just looks grainy. I don't know. These photos were originally shared by NASA and it looks a lot different than a solar sail, in my humble opinion. I'm voting alien satellite. I'm gonna lean into that one. I've been watching that one for a few years. I'm into it. Apparently the Illuminati shot it down back in 2015, but I don't know. That's just the internet being the internet. I was gonna throw that in, but I was like, not enough info on it. So it's definitely a floating alien satellite. Number 3, nursing home spirit. This photo was taken from a nursing home resident the same night another resident had sadly passed away. Good time to take photos and have memories, I guess. This was back in 2015. That night they heard a door open and close a few times, but there were no visitors allowed. So obviously something was afoot. So there's a great amount of people who think that this image here is one of 2 things. The spirit of said resident that had passed away, or the Grim Reaper. That's scary. If it's one of them, I hope it's the first. The door opening and closing, people think that was the Grim Reaper coming in. and doing his Grim Reaper thing and then leaving. That's so scary. I mean, a few comments are saying how it's comforting to know that in the end of your life, you aren't alone and that somebody greets you and, you know, escorts you to the afterlife. I'd rather die alone than have this dude break into my house, to be honest with you, but that's just my opinion. Either way, possible photo of a ghost or the Grim Reaper. How fun is that? Hit the thumbs up for the Grim Reaper. Let's hope we don't see him anytime soon, except for on this list. Number 2, Norway lights. Natural light phenomena is common on our big beautiful planet. The northern lights, for example, the green flash, we've mentioned that before on this channel. Solar eclipses, I bet those were alarming back in ancient times. Just gets dark for a minute and they're like, what happened? Hello? On, please. Some of these natural events look otherworldly, they look cosmic. Most of the time there's an explanation awaiting, but for the mysterious glowing orbs floating over Norway, the Hesdalen lights, as locals refer to them, well, we still need answers for those. Scientists have been trying to gather research for a while now, and in 2014, after many impressive light shows, their best guess so far is that it's a natural battery that charges underground. Yep, whatever that means. Whatever the hell that means. Maybe this has something to do with the reoccurring lights over Phoenix, Arizona. Maybe it's just aliens just bopping about, just doing their alien bopping thing, their usual bopping spots. And finally, number 1, time traveler. Do you believe in time travel? If your answer is no, maybe this last one will change your mind. Hopefully. I'm from the future. It does. And you also hit that thumbs up. I've seen it. And there's many futures. It's a common theme in movies. Back to the Future, Looper, Avengers Endgame. Time travel plots are fun, but they're absolute nonsense. But when we see a case like the Cape Scott story, we can't help but be intrigued just a little bit, right? Could it be? Possibly? Rhyming a little bit? Could it be possibly? Time travel or not, this is an interesting photo. It sticks out. It comes from Ray Peterson's book, The Great Cape Scott Story, and that book was from 1974, but this actual photo was taken over 100 years ago. And there's a modern looking guy in this photo. He looks like he was from yesterday. Rocking shorts, messy morning surfer hair, the thing I'm trying to do apparently in this video. Is that me? Is this my cousin? That's crazy. A photograph from the 40s seems to feature a modern man. Time travel confirmed. That's how we're ending this list. Boom. You're from the future. You saw this coming, right?
Number 10, the Hartley violin. While this may seem like just a photo of an old violin, the story behind it is incredibly significant. This is because the instrument managed to survive the sinking of the Titanic. We all know the story of the ship that hit the iceberg and sank, so let me tell you the story of Wallace Henry Hartley. Hartley was the band leader on the Titanic, and the violin was an engagement gift from his fiancée before he took off on the journey. He was one of the players who stood on the deck of the ship and played music while it sank, attempting to calm the frightened passengers as they boarded lifeboats. Hartley was found 2 weeks later, clutching the case that was strapped to his body. Inside it was his violin, still in good condition thanks to the case protecting it from the water and cold. It went on to be the most valuable Titanic artifact ever sold, selling at auction for $1.7 million. It is now displayed at a history museum in Branson, Missouri, going on to survive long after it played its final notes on the ship. Number 9, Big Island hiker. In 2015, Dalen Pua decided to go on a hike in Hawaii. He told his grandmother he was going to be hiking the Stairway to Heaven trail, which his grandmother warned against as this was a prohibited area. While on his hike, he posted several pictures to social media. Most seemed to be normal, just showing off the view. However, in one photo, you can see a man amongst the trees, following behind Dalen. While a mysterious man in the woods is creepy enough, it gets worse, as Dalen unfortunately never returned from his hike, and to this day, he has never been found. His family studied the pictures closely, trying to find any clues to his whereabouts, and when they spotted the figure, they started to wonder if maybe he had been responsible for Dalen's disappearance. People wonder why this person has not come forward, wondering if it's because he was involved, or he was just scared of being caught hiking on an illegal trail. The search for Dalen consisted of the fire department, local volunteers, drone operators, and even the US Navy, and unfortunately, nothing has ever been found. Number 8, trails in the snow. Another hiking photo, this one comes from a mountain in the Karakoram Himalaya. Greatly accomplished mountaineer Kurt Diemberger was accompanied by his friend Herman Buhl. Buhl had been excited about the expedition, wanting to complete the hike in only 3 days. The photo that Diemberger took seems to be normal, a photo of their tracks on the snowy mountain. However, when you look closely, you can see that one of the tracks does not continue, instead falling off the side. This is because Diemberger took this photo after Herman Buhl fell off the side of the
mountain. Retreating from a snowstorm, Boole stepped off to the side, triggering a massive avalanche, and fell almost 900 meters down the slope, never to be seen again. Diemberger notes how in this situation they had not been roped together, which would have been considered a mistake in any other scenario. In this case, however, he says that if they were tied together, that he would have been pulled down, becoming lost in the avalanche with his friend as well. He went on to say that he would never attempt that mountain again, as without Boole, there is no point. Number 7. Basketball card. By all accounts, this appears to be a regular NBA hoops card, showcasing Mike Jackson from the Knicks. However, if you look at the two young men on the left, you will realize that they are actually the Menendez brothers, Eric and Lyle. If you're not familiar, the Menendez brothers were from a wealthy family and were found guilty of killing their parents after they had allegedly mistreated them. The two weren't immediately caught and went on a spending spree and apparently watched a New York Knicks game. That's right, this photo was actually taken after the crime and before they had been arrested. After the discovery of the card, the Daily Mail was actually able to contact Lyle Menendez in San Diego prison, where both brothers are housed. He said, "It's amazing that somebody spotted it," also commenting on the haunting period that took place after the crime and before the arrest, saying that they went to a lot of Knicks games before, so going to one after wouldn't have been that extravagant. The cards are now available on eBay, usually going for about $5 to $10. Number 6. Rodney Alcala. During the 1970s, a famous game show aired called The Dating Game. The purpose of this show is for one woman to speak to 3 hidden men, asking them questions. By the end of the show, she chooses the one she wants to go on a date with, and after the show, they go. 17-year-old Leanne Leadham appeared on the show with her 3 eligible bachelors, one of which was Rodney Alcala. The show goes fine and nothing seems too out of the ordinary, Rodney even being selected as the man she would go on a date with. What viewers and producers of the show didn't know was that when Rodney was sitting on that chair, he had already committed 4 murders. It's eerie to watch the episode with the hindsight of what had happened. Luckily for Leanne, she changed her mind and never actually went on the date with Rodney, only having a photo shoot together. It makes you wonder just how many other people you've seen on TV or in photos who are actually hiding a terrible secret. Number 5. Autograph. This photo from 1980 isn't all too concerning. It shows John Lennon signing an autograph. The reality of it, however, is that he was signing an autograph for Mark Chapman, the man who merely a few hours later would kill him as he returned home from a recording studio. Chapman had approached Lennon with a fairly rare record, asking Lennon to sign it for him. Lennon then asked, "Is that all?" To which Chapman replied with, "No." Chapman says that at the time this picture was taken, he actually had the weapon in his pocket, but had chickened out of committing the crime at this time. He then went back to Lennon's apartment where he waited for several hours, reading Catcher in the Rye. Finally, as John returned home from the recording studio with tapes under his arms, Chapman shot him. He returned to reading his book until a security guard arrived, the man in tears asking if Mark realized what he had done. Mark was justly sentenced to life in prison. Number 4. Space Crew. In this photo, we see the smiling faces of 7 astronauts posing in zero gravity. Unfortunately, as with most things on this list, this story does not have so happy an ending. That's because this is the crew of the Columbia Space Shuttle. The crew spent 24 hours a day in 2 different shifts, doing various different experiments in life sciences, material sciences, fluid physics, and others. Eventually, they were ready to return home to Earth in 2003. However, their re-entry would prove disastrous. On launch, it was discovered that a piece of foam had broken off and left a hole in the left wing. This hole allowed atmospheric gases to get into the ship eventually completely breaking apart. NASA suspended any shuttle flights for at least 2 years as they investigated, and were apparently criticized as the issue with foam that caused the disaster had been previously known by the organization. This led to the retirement of the space shuttle fleet, astronauts now making their way to the International Space Station by means of Russian rockets or the SpaceX Space Taxi service. Number 3. The Oscars. This photo is of Howard Ashman and Alan Menken. It shows the 2 men celebrating as they had just won an Oscar. They had written the lyrics and music for The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and Aladdin, and in this photo, they were receiving the award for The Little Mermaid. While they seem excited, if you look closely at Howard Ashman on the left, it seems like something is wrong. That night, Ashman told Menken that when they got back to New York, they needed to have a serious talk. 2 days later, they returned and they spoke. Howard Howard told Allen that he had been diagnosed with late-stage AIDS and didn't have much longer to live. Mencken says he recalls Ashman saying, "I didn't want to tell you because I didn't know how Disney would react. Here I am, a gay man, and I'm working on a movie for kids, and I didn't want to be fired." As Disney found out, they instead did everything they could to allow him to continue to work on Beauty and the Beast, even packing up their storyboards and going to his home in New York. Howard later died in 1991 with a long list of accomplishments behind him. Number 2. Memorial photos. These photos look like any other historical portrait. An important fact to note about taking pictures in the olden days was that it took a long time. Like a really long time. I'm talking hours. There was definitely no quick selfie taking back then. Because of this, it was common for the subjects in photos to appear a bit blurry, because you can't expect people to be able to keep perfectly still. But if you look closely at those photos, you'll probably notice that some of the subjects are incredibly clear. Were they just masters of staying still? Well, you could say that, since some of the people in these photos aren't alive. And I don't just mean because it's been so long that they've passed away by now, I mean they aren't alive in the photos. Doing this was actually incredibly common back then and seen as a way to memorialize your loved ones and help lessen grief. It is commonly referred to as post-mortem photography, and the people in the photos were often propped up on stands in order to be held in place. Number 1. Jeannie. This may look like the portrait of a normal little girl, but the truth of her story is the exact opposite of normal. Jeannie Wiley is well known as one of the most popular examples of a feral child, and this is a photo of her. She had been kept tied to a chair for the majority of her childhood, not allowed to speak or cry, her father having often barked and growled at her like a dog. She became an important look into how the minds of children are shaped and how important it is to learn from a young age. While she learned some words, it seems that she never fully learned how to speak properly. Although she couldn't speak, she seemed to be learning quickly, and she actually performed well on intelligence tests. She learned to draw, dress herself, and enjoy music. While she was incredibly popular and widely discussed, no one knows exactly where she is now. She's apparently in an adult foster care home somewhere in California, now over 60 years old.
And we're starting off the list with the Space Shuttle Challenger. This image here is the last photo taken of the crew right before they took off. They never made it back home. The Challenger was a NASA shuttle, and it had 7 crew members. Their mission was to release a communications satellite and study Halley's Comet. The shuttle took off on January 28, 1986, but just 73 seconds into their flight, the spacecraft disintegrated. The explosion was due to a problem with one of the rocket boosters. It was cold that day, and the rubber O-rings that helped seal the joints in the booster didn't work well because of the low temperature. This caused a leak of hot gas, which led to the explosion. Now, every astronaut knows the risks going into a flight. It's not a job you get into and expect to be 100% safe, but at the same time, it's tough looking at an image like this knowing that they were about to die. Number 9, the Andes flight disaster. Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571 took off on October 13th, 1972, carrying 5 crew members and 40 passengers, each members of the old Christian Club rugby union team. This here is the last photo taken on the plane before it crashed in the Andes. Astonishingly though, 27 of the 45 passengers survived the initial crash. There are a series of photographs of these survivors posing next to the crashed plane. It's a tragic case, as many people did die, but in a lot of these pictures, you see them smiling. They look just grateful to still be alive. But there's a darker side to this as well. Out of these 27 survivors, only 16 made it out alive, got back home, having been rescued 72 days later. And in order to survive, they had to make a pretty grisly decision. They resorted to the dead in order to survive. That certainly adds a dark layer to some of these images, but in the end, it is a miracle that 16 of these passengers survived the ordeal. This is one of a series of pictures snapped by 22-year-old Darsh Patel. He was hiking with friends through the Opshwa Preserve in New Jersey when he spotted this black bear and started snapping pictures. In the series of photos, you see this 300-pound black bear moving towards the camera. The friends started to back away, but it continued getting closer, so they decided to separate, running in different directions. When they regrouped later though, Patel wasn't there. 2 hours later, authorities discovered his lifeless body, having been mauled to death by the bear, which was lingering close by. The bear was shot by police, who discovered human remains inside of it. Being rushed at by a bear, one of my biggest fears. I can only imagine how terrifying the last moments of his life must have been here. Number 7, Christopher McCandless. This is the last photo taken of Christopher McCandless, a photo he took himself. On September 6th, 1992, the decomposing body of Christopher was found in a bus he'd been living in just outside of Denali National Park in Alaska. Journal entries by Christopher made it evident that he'd likely died about 19 days earlier. He'd decided to leave civilization behind and live off the grid. He spent 113 days living off the land, using the bus as his shelter. After this time, he decided to head back to civilization. But he was unable, as the river he had crossed was much higher and swifter than it was when he initially ventured in. He returned back and posted an SOS note on the bus reading, "Attention, possible visitors, SOS, I need your help. I am injured, near death, and too weak to hike out. I am all alone. This is no joke. In the name of God, please remain to save me. I am out collecting berries close by and shall return this evening. Thank you. Chris McCandless." It was determined that he had died of starvation. Looking at this image, you can see how gaunt he looks. Apparently he was only 60-something pounds when he was actually discovered. Next up, we have the Titanic. This is one of the last known photographs of the Titanic, taken while it was still afloat. Everyone knows the story here. This supposedly unsinkable ship totally sank. The Titanic disaster happened on April 15th, 1912. The Titanic was a big passenger ship known as unsinkable, but it hit an iceberg on its first voyage from England to America. The ship broke into 2 pieces and sank in the North Atlantic Ocean. Over 1,500 people died, making it one of the deadliest maritime disasters in history. The ship had safety measures like lifeboats, but there weren't enough for everyone on board. The crew didn't have proper training for emergencies, and communication was fairly limited. The iceberg was spotted too late, and the ship couldn't turn in time to avoid the collision. The cold water made survival hard for those who jumped into the ocean, leading to hypothermia and death within minutes. Number 5, we have George Mallory and Sandy Irvine. This is the last photograph snapped of these 2 mountain climbers right before they began their ascent of Mount Everest. They would never return. George Mallory and Sandy Irvine were British mountaineers who died during an expedition to Mount Everest in 1924. Mallory was an experienced climber, and he aimed to be the first person to reach Everest's summit. On June 8th, 1924, Mallory and Irvine set out from their high camp for the summit, but they never made it back. The exact circumstances of their deaths, it's still not 100% known to this day. Mallory's body was discovered in 1999, well preserved due to the cold climate, but Irvine's body and their camera, which could have contained evidence of a summit attempt, were not found. We still don't know if they reached the summit before they died or if they were descending when they met their ends. Next on the list is Joseph Avery. This photograph, taken in 1853, captures a man named Joseph Avery clutching onto a log for his dear life. Avery had been boating along the Niagara River with 2 other friends when the strong current caused them to lose control of their boat, crashing it into a rock. The 2 other passengers were carried off in the current, falling over the falls to their deaths. Avery managed to grab onto a log, though, where he spent 18 whole hours. He must have started feeling completely hopeless until finally help did arrive. A rescue boat came to his aid, and he finally let out a sigh of relief. He could just let go of that goddamn log and would go on to live another day. Only he wouldn't, because the rescue boat capsized almost immediately, sending Avery over the falls where his 2 friends had perished just 18 hours before. I would have just been mad instead of scared at that point, I think. Like, real, after 18 hours, what a cruel fate that would have been. I should have just let go immediately. spent a whole day here. Oh, anyway, I bet you let out some curse words on his way down. Oh man, sorry buddy. Number 3, the Dyatlov Pass incident. In 1959, a group of 10 students and alumni from the Ural Polytechnical Institute, led by Igor Dyatlov, began an expedition across the northern Urals in what was once then the Soviet Union. It was estimated that their trek would take about 16 days to complete, but the group would never return. A search party was dispatched days after the group had been expected to return home. The search and rescue teams did find the hikers, but not alive, and the cause of their deaths are still a mystery to this very day. First, their tents were discovered. They looked to have been torn open from the inside, and most of their gear remained, but the hikers themselves were nowhere to be seen. The following day, the bodies of the hikers were discovered. They had removed most of their clothing and seemed to have ventured out into the cold for some inexplicable reason. Hypothermia was of course the first suspected cause of death, but the students all had strange injuries that left the rescue team stumped. Bruises were present. One of them had thrown up blood. The last 4 bodies were discovered months later. They had built themselves a shelter, and they were fully clothed, but had suffered lethal wounds as well. They had broken bones and blunt force trauma to the head. Horrifyingly, 2 of them were missing their eyes. There are tons of theories about what happened here, ranging from a nuclear testing accident or secret government experiment to aliens somehow being involved, but yeah, we just don't know for sure. In at number 2 is the South Pole Expedition. Captain Robert Falcon Scott, great name, led a British expedition to the South Pole in 1911 to 1912. On January 17, 1912, after a long, grueling trek, Scott and his team finally reached the pole, only to discover that a Norwegian team, led by Roald Amundsen, had already arrived. This photograph shows them just after they made it to their destination. You could tell they're not only completely disheartened, but in noticeably bad shape. They're frostbitten, they look weak and just fed up. They began the long, torturous return journey across the frozen landscape. Facing severe weather, exhaustion, dwindling supplies, the team struggled to make progress and food shortages became very critical. Edgar Evans died on February 17, 1912, followed by Lawrence Oates, who ended his life by walking out of the tent into a blizzard. Scott and his remaining companions, Edward Wilson, Henry Bowers, and Edgar Evans, pressed on, but their physical condition just continued to get worse. They were trapped in their tent for 9 days by a storm, unable to go anywhere, and they eventually died in the tent, just 11 miles from a supply depot. Scott's last diary entry was dated March 29th, 1912. Coming in at our number 1 spot, we have these portraits of some of the crew in John Franklin's polar expedition. These photographs were taken just 3 days before they set sail. John Franklin and his crew embarked on their expedition in 1845 to find the Northwest Passage, a sea route connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans through the Arctic. The expedition included 2 ships, the HMS Erebus and the HMS Terror. However, both ships became trapped in ice off the coast of King William Island in the Canadian Arctic. The harsh conditions took a toll on the crew. Franklin died in June 1847, probably from exposure and starvation. With their ships immobilized by ice, the crew attempted to survive on land, and over the next few years, many of the crew members succumbed to starvation, exposure, and diseases. In desperation, some had resorted to in an effort to find help, some crew members set out on foot, but none survived. In total, all 129 men on the expedition perished, and the ships themselves were abandoned in 1848, and the crew left behind written records of their struggles. The remains of the expedition's members were discovered by search parties, and investigations revealed these tragic circumstances of their deaths. And we're starting off the list with this photo here. Just look at this happy young couple. They got their arms around each other. They're smiling for the camera. With my keen senses of sight and sharp detective skills, I can also see that they're standing right in front of a tent. And due to the dark background and dirt-like appearance of the ground they're standing on, it appears as if they're outdoors. There also appears to be a fire raging in the bottom left-hand corner And because the couple are posing for a picture rather than panicking, I think we got ourselves a good old-fashioned tent and fire party on our hands. A camping trip, perhaps. Everything looks pretty normal until your eyes drift to the left of the couple. Just what in tarnation is that? A short, semi-translucent figure seems to be lurking right behind this unwitting couple. Kind of looks like a ghost doll. Two words that should never be placed beside each other in a sentence. If you're liking our channel, by the way, why not hit that subscribe button? You got nothing to lose. And leave your comments down below. What do you think of these photographs in this list? And at number 9, we have this photo, which I'm just gonna call the mysterious ghoul. Before we get to the scary stuff though, let me use my keen intellect to set the scene here. Don't have a lot of information about these pictures, so I gotta pull from them what I can. All three of these gentlemen are dressed as fancy lads. Nice fitted tuxedos, and they're all smiling at the camera. Pretty obvious to me that these guys were dressed up to hit the cinema to catch the latest Bond movie on opening night. Due to the quality of the picture, I'm gonna guess this is like 2006, so Casino Royale. Nice. They look pretty excited to catch the flick too, but they wouldn't be so excited if they saw the ghoul like crouching between their legs at the bottom of the picture. Like, who invited Reagan from The Exorcist to the 007 dress-up party? What is a ghoul? A small zombie? Nightmare fuel. That's what it is. Anyway, I hope these guys didn't get mauled by this demon as soon as Terry put his $12 disposable Kodak camera back in his pocket to document the rest of the evening. And at number 8, we have the family photo. Old vintage photographs are always a bit unsettling to me. I feel like most of you would probably agree with that. The black and white just makes everything look drab and sad, but I think the main reason why vintage pictures are so off-putting is that everyone in them is probably dead by now. And in this picture, we see a happy family. There are a whole bunch of empty lawn chairs behind them, way more than are necessary for one family. So my guess is that they just had a party, but they may have had one uninvited guest make an appearance in their family picture, lurking in the background to the left, right in front of the door. It doesn't look like it has a body, or maybe it has a body, but it's just shrouded in shadow. Just what is this thing though? Is it a clown, an intruder wearing a kabuki mask? Let us know your thoughts down below, but I don't like it. Next on the list, we have this picture of a lady smiling in bed. She looks glad to be home. Can't blame her, and why would I want to? Nothing wrong with being happy and smiling. But there's a lot of strange stuff going on with this picture. Using my hawk-like eyes, I see she looks to be wearing a Christmas-themed blanket, but the fan pointing directly at her face tells me a different story. It tells me it's hot in that room, so I don't think it's December. Then again, the fan isn't on, so does she just leave the fan perched over her bed all year round collecting dust? Or does it just happen to be off at this present moment and she lives somewhere maybe where it's warm all year round, like California? It's either Christmas in Cali or she just really likes Christmas and wears that blanket all the time. The point is, there's something hiding in this picture. I'll give you a second to figure out what it is. Yeah, right where the corner of the mattress and the back of the bed frame meet, there's an eye poking out from under the bed. Whoever this person is, they're obviously hiding. But the question is, does she know this person is there? Like, maybe is she hiding them? Is it her boyfriend who's not supposed to be there? Or is it an intruder? It's pretty much either one of those situations. At our number 6 spot, we have a photo I'm going to call the tree trunk terror. This is one for all you arachnophobes out there. Yeah, it doesn't take long looking at this picture to realize there's a massive sized spider parked right in the middle of this tree, blending in with the bark. I'm not sure what kind of tree this is. It doesn't look like a particularly big one, but the spider's legs extend out pretty far. I'm guessing this would probably be almost the size of a grown man's hand hand, which just isn't good. I don't want that in a spider. Imagine walking through the woods at night. You're trying to find your way back to your tent after taking a leak. You're already freaked out because a ghost was spotted in the picture your buddy took of you and your girlfriend in front of the fire. And then you place your hand on a tree only to feel something long and furry squirming around under your hand. It's not a squirrel, a little too skinny to be a squirrel. It's this spider. Your camping career would probably be over in an instant and nobody would blame you. Number 5, newlyweds. Oh no, not another old vintage black and white photograph. So we have a couple who look to have just gotten married. The wife looks mildly pleased. The husband looks like he's doing the 1,000-yard stare. Maybe he's been forced into this arrangement. Anyway, people rarely smile in old photographs though, so maybe they were very happy. Who knows? What really that makes this picture feel extra haunted though is lurking in the background. Take a gander at the window. Clearly you can see a figure peering out. It looks to be a man dressed in a suit and a tie, possibly a wedding guest. There's something off about him. His features are almost entirely blurred. You can't make out eyes, a nose, a mouth, all those things that make a human face comfortable to look at. So is this a deceased family member making a visit from the afterlife to attend this wedding? Or did these folks just not clean their windows like ever? Next we have lurking fear. Now, it's hard for me to really call this a normal photo. Wherever this is, it looks like a pretty creepy place. Completely dilapidated and the lighting is very low. It looks like nighttime. Seems to me we have an abandoned place of some kind on our hands, and abandoned places are inherently unsettling, not to mention kind of dangerous. If it's not an abandoned place, it's just someone's very unkempt apartment. They need to clean every once in a while, keep everything in their place from rotting away. Anyway, it's very hard to spot at first glance with all the mess filling up the frame, but if you look pretty much dead center, you'll see a pair of beady glowing eyes and a pale face peering out from the debris of what used to be a wall. Most likely it's a squatter, but the low camera quality and the dim lighting makes it look a bit like a rake or golem, which is not fun. Next up we have the Pigman. This photo was taken at Fort Worden Artillery Battery, an abandoned artillery base. You could see two people hugging. I don't know about you, but a dark, dank, decrepit concrete passage is not where I'd want to be for an intimate embrace. Anyway, scan your eyes to the top left of the frame, and you can clearly see a figure sandwiched between the ceiling and a concrete structure. It's probably just the sweet early 2000s digital camera quality that's making this person look so messed up, but to me this person looks like a pigman. And the last thing I'd want is to be exploring an abandoned military barracks that are probably haunted already, only to have a deformed pig monster jump down on my head from up in the ceiling somewhere. Ugh. And in second place, we have Chucky. Just look at these cool bros. They look chill. They look cool. They're just a couple bros hanging out, posing for a picture on their sweet 2006 photo booth app. Remember how entertaining photo booth used to be? The amount of embarrassing photo booth pictures there are of me floating around the internet. Anyway, these two aren't the only people captured in this picture. Looks like we got something lurking in the background, and it doesn't look friendly. I joke, but whatever that is at the bottom center of the frame, it's pretty nightmare inducing. It looks kind of like a Chucky doll, or again like Reagan from The Exorcist, neither of which I'd want creeping around in the shadows of my home at night. And finally, we have this photo of a cute cat. Look at this cute cat. It's just having dinner, looking up at the camera, but the glowing eyes of the cat aren't the only glowing eyes in this picture. Just what are those two beady glowing green eyes in the background there? Is it perhaps another cat or maybe a dog? Well, that's highly unlikely because looking closely, this picture was taken from high up. We have stairs leading down to the left, and it looks like we're around the same height of those branches in the tree in the top right of the picture. So whatever those eyes are, they're pretty high up. Maybe it's a giant cat, but that's That's really scary too. Or most likely, they're big enough to be all the way at ground level and still be seen from high up. So it's some kind of creature down there. To me, it kind of looks maybe like alligator eyes, which may not be paranormal, but that is still a pretty terrifying animal to have lurking around in your backyard.